In 1962, while families were gathering around their black and white TVs to watch the Flintstones, Hanna-Barbera premiered another animated sitcom set 100 years into the future. A world of flying cars, robot maids, and a 3-day work week. But here's the thing. The future they showed us wasn't just a fun fantasy. Hidden in the show are dark secrets, bizarre coincidences, disturbing behind-the-scenes stories, and predictions that are so accurate it's almost creepy. Once you connect the unsettling details, the cartoon starts to feel less like comedy and more like a warning. The shocking reason the Jetsons was canceled. The Jetsons is remembered as one of the most legendary cartoons ever made, a futuristic show that seemed far ahead of its time. But behind the flying cars, robot maids, and perfect cities in the sky are a series of strange facts most fans have never heard about. In fact, the real reason the show suddenly disappeared after just one season is so unexpected. The details will leave you shocked. When Hanna-Barbera created the Jetsons, the idea seemed impossible to fail. The studio had already changed television forever with the Flintstones, turning everyday American life into a comedy set in the Stone Age. Dinosaurs became machines, caves became houses, and modern problems became prehistoric jokes. The show was a massive success, so the next step felt obvious. If the past worked, the future should work too. That was the idea behind the Jetsons. Instead of looking backward, the studio would imagine what life might look like hundreds of years ahead. Orbit City would be the opposite of bedrock. Families would live in the sky, robots would do the housework, and technology would make everything easier. But even with all the futuristic gadgets, the show was still about the same thing that made the Flintstones popular: an ordinary family dealing with ordinary problems. There was one big difference, though, and it turned out to matter more than anyone expected. Unlike most cartoons at the time, the Jetsons was never meant to be just a children's show. Hanna-Barbera designed it as a primetime sitcom, something adults could watch with their families. That meant the show had to compete with the biggest programs on television, not just other cartoons. And the moment it was placed on the schedule, the show was thrown into a situation that almost no new series could survive. ABC put the Jetsons on Sunday nights, one of the most competitive hours on television. Instead of giving the new show room to grow, the network scheduled it directly against two giants. On one channel was NBC's Walt Disney's Wonderful World of Color, one of the most powerful family shows ever made. On another was CBS's Dennis the Menace, which already had a loyal audience. Going up against Disney alone would have been difficult. Going up against both at the same time made it nearly impossible for a brand new animated series to build ratings. From the very beginning, the show was fighting a battle it was never likely to win. But the time slot was only part of the problem. The bigger issue was something no one at the studio could control, and that was the mood of the country itself. Television in the early 1960s was changing, and audiences were starting to move away from futuristic ideas and towards something much simpler. Instead of stories about space-age cities, viewers wanted shows that felt familiar, grounded, and easy to understand. Nothing showed that shift more clearly than what happened the same week the Jetsons premiered. Another new series debuted at the exact same time, CBS's The Beverly Hillbillies. While the Jetsons imagined life in the future, the Beverly Hillbillies told stories about a family from the Ozarks living a simple life. And almost overnight, it became one of the biggest hits on television. The message was clear. At that moment in history, audiences were more interested in the past and the present than the future. And while ratings were already struggling, there was another problem behind the scenes that made the situation even worse. The Jetsons was expensive. Hanna-Barbera had built its success using limited animation, a style that reused drawings to save money. That worked perfectly for the Flintstones, where the Stone Age setting allowed the same backgrounds and movements to be used again and again. But the Jetsons was different. The futuristic world required new designs, more detailed machines, and complicated cityscapes that could not be reused as easily. Every episode took more work, more time, and more money. When the ratings did not match the cost, the network started to lose confidence. Animators later admitted that the studio tried everything to cut expenses. In later productions, backgrounds from other shows were reused, characters were redrawn from older animation, and entire movements were copied from different series and simply recolored to look futuristic. With high costs, weak ratings, and a time slot stacked against it, the decision finally came in 1963. After only one season, ABC canceled the primetime run of the Jetsons. But the strange part is that the show did not disappear. Instead of throwing the episodes away, the network moved them to Saturday morning, where cartoons usually belonged. Away from the pressure of primetime competition, the same 24 episodes suddenly found the audience they never had before. Kids loved it, families kept watching it, and reruns slowly turned what looked like a one-season failure into one of the most recognizable cartoons ever made. But what happened after the show ended is even stranger. Because once fans started looking closer at the people behind the voices, they noticed something disturbing. Several of the actors connected to the Jetsons died under very unusual circumstances, and over time, some viewers began to believe the show itself carried a strange kind of curse. The voice actor curse. For a show as bright and optimistic as the Jetsons, the history behind the voices of the characters is strangely dark. Over the years, fans started noticing a pattern that felt almost too bizarre to ignore. Several of the actors who helped bring Orbit City to life never made it to the show's biggest comeback, and in 2 cases, the timing of their deaths was so unsettling that some viewers began calling it the Jetsons' curse. One of the first moments that made people uneasy involved Daws Butler, one of the most important voice actors in animation history. Butler was not only the voice of Elroy Jetson, the youngest member of the Jetson family, but also the voice behind characters like Yogi Bear, Huckleberry Hound, and Snagglepuss. His work was a huge part of the Hanna-Barbera sound, and for many fans, his voice was inseparable from the studio itself. When the Jetsons was brought back in the 1980s for a revival series, Butler returned to voice Elroy again, just like he had in the original 1960s episodes. Everything seemed normal at the time, and the revival introduced the characters to a new generation. But when production began on Jetsons, the movie in 1990, something unexpected happened. Butler was not there. He passed away before the film went into production, meaning the original voice of Elroy never got the chance to return for what was supposed to be the biggest project the show had ever done. The role had to be recast, and actor Pat Zimmerman was hired to replace him for the movie. For longtime fans, the change felt strange. The character sounded different, and many people did not even realize why until they learned that the original voice actor had died. On its own, that might have just seemed like bad timing, but what happened later made the situation feel much more unsettling. George Jetson, the voice everyone associated with the show, was played by actor George O'Hanlon. He had been part of the Jetsons from the very beginning, voicing the character in the original 1962 series and returning again for the revival in the 1980s. When work started on Jetsons, the movie, O'Hanlon was back in the studio, recording lines for what would become the character's first full-length film. And then, in the middle of production, something went wrong. According to reports from the time, O'Hanlon had already recorded most of his dialogue for the movie, nearly all of George Jetson's lines, when he suddenly suffered a stroke while working. The incident happened during the recording process, and he was rushed to the hospital, where he later died. Because the film was not finished, another voice actor, Jeff Bergman, had to step in to complete the remaining lines so the movie could be released. For many fans, the detail that made the story feel eerie was where it happened. The actor who had voiced George Jetson for decades suffered the stroke that killed him while still working on the character. He was recording George Jetson's voice when the medical emergency happened, and the film he was helping to finish became one of the last projects he ever worked on. With 2 of the show's most important voices gone before the movie was even released, some viewers began to look back at the production differently. What was supposed to be a happy return for one of television's most cheerful cartoons suddenly had a strange shadow over it. The film went on, and the characters stayed the same, but behind the scenes, the people who had made the show famous were no longer there. And the more fans continued looking at the details surrounding the Jetsons, the more they noticed other things that did not seem quite right. The characters had details that felt oddly off, including one fact about George and Jane Jetson that most viewers never noticed: the weird age gap between George and Jane Jetson. For a show that looks so simple on the surface, The Jetsons has a lot of small details that feel surprisingly strange once you notice them. One of the oddest facts involves the ages of the main characters, something most viewers never paid attention to when watching the show as kids. But when you look at the official character information from the original 1962 series, the numbers do not line up the way you might expect. According to the original character profiles, George Jetson was 40 years old. That makes sense for a father with a full-time job, a teenage daughter, and a young son. His daughter Judy is in her mid-teens, and his son Elroy is around 6 years old. On the surface, that sounds like a normal family for a sitcom, even if that family happens to live in the sky. But the surprise comes when you look at Jane Jetson's age. In the official series information, Jane is listed as being around 33 years old. That means there is a 7-year age difference between her and George. Today, that might not seem like a big deal, but the numbers reveal something stranger. If Jane is 33 and Judy is 15, that means Jane was only 18 years old when she had her daughter. At the time, many sitcoms followed the same pattern. The husband was older, the wife was younger, and the family structure often matched the idea of the perfect suburban household that television liked to show. In shows from that era, the wife was usually portrayed as cheerful, stylish, and supportive, while the husband was the one dealing with work, money, and stress. Looking back now, some people see Jane's age as an example of the trophy wife image that was popular in that period. What makes it even stranger is that The Jetsons was supposed to represent the future. The show imagined flying cars, robot maids, and cities in the sky, but the family structure still looked exactly like a typical American household from the early 1960s. Even in Orbit City, the roles stayed the same. And the age gap between George and Jane is one of those small details that reminds you the future they imagined was really just their present with more gadgets. But the age gap is not the only strange thing hidden in the show's background, because one of the most beloved characters in The Jetsons also has a backstory that feels a lot darker than people expect. The family dog, Astro, seems like just another funny cartoon pet, but the real origin of the character is much stranger than you think. The shocking origin of Astro. Astro is one of the most lovable characters in The Jetsons. He is the clumsy, talking dog who follows George everywhere, gets into trouble, and somehow always makes things funnier. For most viewers, Astro just seems like another cartoon pet, the futuristic version of the family dog. But one episode of the original series reveals a detail about him that changes the way you see the character completely. The strange truth comes from the episode titled Millionaire Astro, the 15th episode of the original 1962 run. In that story, the family discovers that their dog has a past they never knew about. A wealthy businessman named J.P. Gottrockets appears and claims that Astro is actually his missing dog. According to him, the dog's real name is not Astro at all. It is Tralfaz. The episode explains that Astro had originally belonged to the millionaire before somehow ending up with the Jetson family. When the truth comes out, the Jetsons do the right thing and return him to his original owner. For a moment, it looks like the family is going to lose their dog forever, and the story takes a surprisingly emotional turn for what is supposed to be a light comedy cartoon. What makes the situation even stranger is how Astro reacts to his old identity. When he hears the name Tralfaz, he immediately complains about it and calls it yuck, making it clear that he prefers being called Astro. The joke is played for laughs, but it also shows something unusual for a cartoon animal from that era. Astro is not just a pet. He has opinions, preferences, and even a sense of who he wants to be. In the end, the millionaire realizes that Astro is happier with the Jetsons and allows him to stay with them. The family keeps their dog, and the show moves on like nothing happened. But once you think about it, the detail is pretty bizarre. The Jetsons' beloved family pet is technically a runaway dog who used to belong to one of the richest people in their world. For a show about the future, it is a surprisingly strange backstory, and it becomes even more interesting when you look at how Astro was created in the first place. The similarities between Astro and another famous cartoon dog are not an accident. Both characters were designed by the same animator, Iwao Takamoto, one of the key artists at Hanna-Barbera. Takamoto had a very specific style when it came to animal characters, and you can see it clearly when you compare Astro to Scooby-Doo. Both dogs have the same oversized body shape, the same nervous personality, and the same way of talking. Astro's famous line, "Ruro Riorge," sounds almost exactly like Scooby-Doo's Ruro Raggy. That is because both voices were done by the same actor, Don Messick, who worked on many Hanna-Barbera shows. When you listen closely, it feels less like two different characters and more like one design that evolved into another. Because of that, some animation historians consider Astro the prototype for Scooby-Doo. The way he moves, the way he speaks, and even the way he reacts to danger all follow the same pattern that would later make Scooby-Doo one of the most famous cartoon characters ever created. In a way, the family dog from the Jetsons helped shape the future of animation, even if most viewers never realized it. It is another example of how a show that looked simple on the surface was full of strange details once you started paying attention. And the strange facts about the Jetsons do not stop there, because one of the most talked about things about the show today is how many of its futuristic ideas actually came true, while others were completely wrong. Some of the predictions the writers made turned out to be almost perfect, and others missed the future in ways that feel just as bizarre as anything else in the show. The predictions that were right and completely wrong. One of the reasons the Jetsons still feel so strange today is because the future it imagined does not look as ridiculous as it used to. For years, people joked about the 3-hour workday, flying cars, and robot maids. But when you look closer, the show actually predicted more real technology than almost any other cartoon in history. In fact, some of the gadgets that seemed impossible in 1962 now exist almost exactly the way the show drew them. And the strangest part is that a few of those predictions were never meant to be predictions at all. The writers filled Orbit City with devices that looked like pure fantasy at the time. The family used video phones to talk face-to-face from different locations, something that felt unbelievable in the early 1960s, but is now normal with smartphones and video calls. Their house was full of smart technology, with machines that turned on with voice commands, doors that opened automatically, and appliances that worked without anyone touching them. Even the idea of robotic helpers cleaning the house looked ridiculous back then, but today, robotic vacuums, voice assistants, and smart home systems are part of everyday life. The show even imagined portable screens, wrist devices, and machines that could make food instantly. Tablets, smartwatches, hologram-style displays, and 3D printed meals all appeared in the Jetsons decades before they became real inventions. Looking back now, the cartoon almost feels less like comedy and more like a technological prophecy disguised as a family sitcom. But the more accurate the show seems, the stranger some of the details become, because a few of the things it predicted were not planned at all. They happened by accident. One of the best examples is the way the show handled television screens. In many scenes, characters talk to each other through video phones that look like flat screens hanging in the air. Today, that looks normal because we actually have thin wall-mounted displays. But in 1962, televisions were bulky CRT boxes, and flat screens did not exist yet. The animators only drew them that way because it was easier than drawing a big, heavy machine every time. In some episodes, the screens even appear transparent, with characters visible through the display. That was never meant to be futuristic technology. It was just an animation shortcut, so the artists would not have to draw the back of a character's head. Decades later, companies like LG and Samsung started developing transparent OLED screens, something that looks almost exactly like the mistake the animators made. A simple drawing trick ended up looking like a real prediction of technology that would not exist for more than 50 years. Another strange example involves Rosie the Robot Maud, one of the most famous characters in the show. Rosie is often seen as the perfect symbol of futuristic living, a robot who cooks, cleans, and takes care of the house. Even today, people still use her as an example of how far we have not come, because we still do not have a general-purpose humanoid robot doing household chores. But the strange part is that even in 1962, the idea of Rosie was not new. Her name was a reference to Rosie the Riveter, the World War II symbol of women working in factories during the 1940s. That means the future robot maid was already based on something from the past. And there is another detail most viewers never noticed. The voice of Rosie was done by Jean Vander Pyle, the same actress who voiced Wilma Flintstone. In a strange way, the future family in Orbit City had the same voice living in their house as the Stone Age family in Bedrock. Some fans have joked that this creates a weird connection between the two shows, almost like the future depends on the past in a way the writers never intended. It also makes the world of the Jetsons feel less perfect, because even in the future, someone still has to do the work. The show also predicted personal flight, something that still feels futuristic today. George Jetson travels to work using a jetpack called the Jet Motor, a device that looked like pure science fiction when the show first aired. But what makes this detail strange is that the idea of jetpacks already existed before the cartoon came out. In 1961, just 1 year before the Jetsons premiered, Bell Aerosystems built a real rocket belt that could lift a person into the air. The device worked, but only for a few seconds at a time, and it was never practical for everyday use. There were even experiments in the 1960s where the U.S. Postal Service reportedly tested jetpacks for mail delivery. The show made the idea look normal, but in reality, the technology never became useful enough to replace cars or airplanes. Not every prediction the show made came true, though, and some of the ones that failed are just as strange as the ones that worked. For example, the Jetson family lives in a tall apartment building that can move up and down with the push of a button. The idea behind this was not just to look futuristic. The creators believed cities would become so crowded that people would stop living in houses and move into huge modular towers where entire apartments could shift and rearrange. In the early 1960s, many people thought the future would mean less space, more machines, and cities packed with people living high above the ground. But the opposite happened. Instead of everyone moving into sky cities, suburbs became bigger than ever. Families spread out instead of stacking upward, and the idea of push-button skyscrapers never came close to reality. The show predicted that the future would force people into tight, mechanical living spaces, but real life moved in a completely different direction. Looking back now, that might be the strangest thing about the Jetsons. Some of its wildest ideas came true almost exactly, while others missed the future completely. The show imagined a world that felt impossible in 1962, but parts of that world are normal today, and parts of it still look like science fiction. And the predictions get even stranger when you look at one detail most people never think about. George Jetson was born in our time. Out of all the strange facts about the Jetsons, this might be the one that feels the most unreal. For years, people thought the show took place in some distant future, hundreds of years away, far beyond anything we would ever live to see. But according to the official dates connected to the show, George Jetson is supposed to be alive right now. The idea first became popular through a viral meme that spread online. It claimed that George Jetson's birthday is July 31st, 2022, and that the character was born exactly 40 years before the year the show takes place. Since the Jetsons is set in the year 2062, the math seems simple. If George is 40 years old in the show, then his birth year would be 2022, which means he would be a baby in the world we are living in today. At first, many people assumed the meme was just another internet joke, the kind of thing that sounds funny but is not actually true. But when the timeline of the show was checked more carefully, the story turned out to be stranger than anyone expected. When the Jetsons first aired in 1962, the writers never gave an exact year for when the show took place. It was simply the future, a vague time filled with technology and space-age ideas. But when the series was revived in the 1980s, the creators decided to make the setting more specific. They retroactively placed the story 100 years after the original air date, meaning the Jetson family was now officially living in the year 2062. That means the world the show imagined is no longer some distant future. It is connected directly to the present. In the logic of the show, while you are watching this video right now, George Jetson would be a baby, or at most a small child, somewhere in that fictional universe. The future that once felt impossibly far away is supposed to be unfolding at the same time we are living our normal lives. Orbit City, flying cars, robot maids, and 3-hour workdays are not meant to exist centuries from now. They are supposed to exist within the lifetime of people alive today. And that is what makes the detail feel so bizarre. When the show first aired, 2062 sounded like a year no one would ever reach. It was far enough away that the writers could imagine anything they wanted without worrying about whether it would actually happen. But now that the real world has reached the 2020s, the gap between the present and the Jetsons' future suddenly feels much smaller than anyone expected. Instead of looking like pure science fiction, the show now feels like a prediction that is slowly running out of time to come true. The world looks more advanced than it did in 1962, but it does not look anything like Orbit City. And the strange part is that according to the timeline the show itself created, the countdown has already started. What do you think? Would there be flying cars, push-button skyscrapers, and robot maids by 2062? Let us know in the comment section below. Don't forget to click on the next video on your screen, like this video, and subscribe to our channel for more updates.